Welcome again, everyone. I know you've seen a couple of us on stage already, Monique and myself. We're back. So, if you're not bored of us already, you will be by, the next hour or so. How long do we have for this panel, by the way? Is it until 1:30, I believe? Tell me, because I'll get carried away. And 1:30? Okay, this is all about being organised in life. You always know the end point, so you know where you're starting from. Right, well, first of all, welcome again, everyone. And for this panel, this is football, not just careers on the pitch. And this panel is very kindly supported by Visa. And I would like to thank them for their kind support, because through Visa's player support program, the second half, which was launched in early 2020 with Karen Carney, Visa's helping to empower female footballers to take the skills they've learned on the pitch into their post-playing off-pitch careers. So we're delighted to hear that supporting women in football by sponsoring this session was an easy decision for Visa to make, and we all hope organisations who are truly committed to driving diversity in our industry will join them to work with us as well. You'll have heard about me during the first session, so I'm not going to repeat myself. I've been in this industry as a broadcaster for a long time. I'm also an ambassador for women in football, a proud ambassador for WIF as well. I know everyone's active on social media today, so do join the conversation via the hashtag WIFBeinspired and Women in Football as well. And also turn your phones to silent, which I did because mine rang at some point during the first panel. So thankfully I'd done that. Really looking forward to this one. I'm going to introduce the panel straight away and get stuck in. Sara Butler. We had to check that because it's spelled Sara, but it is Sara. Leading the way in the film production industry. Sara is currently the managing director of Shoot the Company, the award-winning production agency, and one of the UK's top boutique filmmakers. Shoot the Company actually made the Got On Side films that you'll have seen today at the conference. And in this leadership role, Sara fosters a unique, collaborative and creative team culture with storytelling at the heart of Sara's career to date, which spans more than 20 years. She's gained an industry-wide, this is great. She's gained an industry-wide reputation for delivering beyond the needs and expectations of long-term clients, including FIFA, UEFA, Barclays, McDonald's, and of course, women in football as well. Monique, you will have heard about. Do you need a reintroduction? I don't think she does. You know how fabulous Monique is already. Jen, you're an experiential marketing and partnerships manager at, hold on, Barclays. Jen started out in the Barclays sponsorship team in 2015. You were initially running events and managing rights across the bank's sports sponsorship properties, including the ATP World Tour finals and the Premier League as well. You went on to manage the Barclaycard relationship with AEG and Live Nation, activating across UK festivals as well. That sounds like fun. And in 2019, you returned from maternity leave to your current role, and now you're responsible for the FA relationship, which basically oversees the Barclays Women's Super League title sponsorship and Barclays Girls Grassroots Initiative as well. And prior to that, you had a number of roles, I think, within sports marketing at Nike as well. So that's pretty cool. Lola Ogunbote, did I say that right?
Yeah, close.
Nigerian?
Yes.
I can only say that because I've been to Nigeria and I've lived in Lagos for like 3 months, so I know. How body in the clot?
Body the good.
Body in the clot, yeah. And can I say, how now? These are new clots. Can I just say? She bought that suit today because I was like, I saw that suit in Zara yesterday. She's like, yeah, I bought it this morning. I was like,
Lovely.
Lola, you know. And actually, I should have read the next line because it says you are a Nigerian-born Brit in Lagos.
Lagos.
Who enjoys the best of both cultures, a bit like me, nice to be bilingual and multicultural, whatever. You're a UK qualified lawyer who transitioned into the football sector in 2016, so you're passionate about driving gender equity initiatives, increasing female participation in sports, specifically in football, and female leadership development as well. You've coached football and led professional male and female teams across the continents, Asia, Africa, Australia, North America, and Europe. And in 2021, Lola became the first women's business lead for Burnley Football Club Women. So she combines her passion for leadership development, gender empowerment, and football through her role as the executive director of Goals for Girls, a US nonprofit organization that unites girls through football to lead community change. Well, that's pretty special. Tina Keech is, I feel like I'm doing, I don't know, like blind date or something. Tina, you are the head of women's football research at Sports Interactive, and we like Sports Interactive, Miles and the gang. Big supporters of women's football. Tina, you played football for many years with various clubs and at university as well, and eventually with Barnet Ladies. You studied sports science at Brunel University, specialising in coaching. Tina spent 15 years working at a data analytics company, working her way through the company to head up the research team, where you covered roughly 50 leagues around the world, collecting live football data. God, I could never do that. And you provide expert knowledge on matches and scouting players for clients as well, which were... including football clubs and professional gamblers as well. So that is all very exciting. I've covered everyone. Okay. So that's sort of all of you in a nutshell. Sara, I want to start with you, actually. Really, in a kind of quite similar to what I do as well, but you really are championing women in this industry and working with major football clients as well. Just give us a little, in a nutshell, sort of the journey that you took to get there.
So my journey into football wasn't really a conventional one at all. I had two massive passions as a child. The first was football. The second was storytelling. I'm of a generation similar to sort of Kelly Smith, where we were allowed to, Joe Tongue and I used to go to Spurs together from the age of 11.
Oh, she's a Spurs fan too? Oh, I didn't know you were in that club.
Sorry.
Sorry.
We were allowed to go and we could watch the games, but, we would drink in pubs when we got older in our teenage years that didn't even have a ladies' loo. I mean, and we just sort of accepted this, that, oh, well, we better not drink too much because there's actually nowhere to go for a wee. And so it never in a million years occurred to me that I could have a job that combined my two big passions of storytelling and football. Anyone that was telling stories about football, whether that was in print or on TV, on Match of the Day, as Joe has talked about, were male. And it makes me quite angry sort of hearing Kelly's story and the other women talking today that we were just accepting of that. And it didn't actually occur to me that I could do anything different. So I decided to take the storytelling bit of my passion and went off and I built a career in TV drama. So very, very different to football. Climbed the ranks, absolutely loved it, got to the age of 30, produced my first feature film, had a baby. So again, it was, oh, well, I can't do that anymore because I've got a child. Again, still so actually I came and worked in football. Whoops.
Yeah, well done for choosing
that easy route.
Open-minded industry. Yeah.
But that was the time when I found Shoot the Company, that is run by two brilliant guys who had young families themselves at the time, and a lot of people have talked about male allies today and how important it is. And it was only at that point that through us growing Shoot the Company as a business and winning clients like FIFA and UEFA, because again, Tom, Henry and I are passionate about football, so when we were developing the business and looking for new clients, we gravitated in that area, that I suddenly realised, and I'd actually, by the way, been doing it for about 4 or 5 years before I took a step back and went, oh, I'm suddenly doing the two things that I love, and this is amazing. But the point is there were no women doing it like me, and if they were, like Jackie, it was so one-off and so unique that as a young person, I just thought, well, that person's obviously amazing. And I would look at people that are my age now in senior roles and think, well, I couldn't be like that. And now, all of a sudden, and that's why I think it's really important for all of the women like us sitting on the panel today to show our vulnerable side. Like Jo was very open in lots of the things that she was saying, and I think that's incredibly important, so that you're opening that door to elevate everyone up and embracing what it is to be a woman in a senior role.
Yeah, you've got to keep it real. I think that's the
Absolutely.
That's the big message from here. Tina, could you also give us a little, in a nutshell, just how you reached where you
Well,
are? She's half Mauritian, by the way. I know she doesn't look it, but she is.
I am half Mauritian.
We had this conversation.
Proud.
Should be.
So I played football for years, coached football, and if you play football, the natural progression is to go into coaching. I'd had a couple of years of just horrible injuries, and back then there was no support for, it was all through the NHS, which took ages to get through for surgery, and mentally I struggled, and probably I was losing a bit of love for the game. Finished uni, And an opportunity just came up to work for a data analytics team. And actually, the job description, which was for a friend of a friend of a friend, cousin, dog, whatever it is, was, we've got too many men, I need a woman in the office that knows football. So off I went to Kentish Town, to the pub across the road, and chatted about Tottenham for half an hour, and I got the job.
Should we just have another conversation?
It's not a conspiracy.
And yeah, I just worked my way through the company, 15 years with the data analytics, got the head of a department, and I got all the comments. She only got it because she's a woman. What is she doing with the owner? Like, I had it all, and I had to work and prove myself. And yeah, I lost my job during COVID. Horrendous confidence went down. Leadership at Women in Football and Monique helped me build up my confidence again, and I got this job with Sports Interactive. And the goal is to add women's football to the game and bring a new audience.
Brilliant.
And that's where I am now.
Excellent. Lola, if you could do the same.
Yeah, I think for me, my journey into football is quite unconventional. I am Nigerian, as we discussed, and so for those of you who are familiar with Nigerian culture and parents, sport really isn't a pathway that they are celebrating. It's very
Same
much
for Asians. It's
very
exactly
much
the same.
education. And so I did that. I studied. I went to law school. And I got to a point where I knew that football was my passion. I had the opportunity to go and play abroad, but my parents didn't necessarily think that that was a good option for me. So that was kind of a dream on the back burner, and I went and I studied. I was decent at school. I qualified and ended up working for one of the largest investment banks in the country, so Goldman Sachs. I got there, and I think for everybody that has that dream, it is the holy grail of law and finance. And so, I remember standing there and being initiated and, being celebrated that I got that position. And I remember the CEO at the time was like, this is great for you. You're so young and, you can end up like me. And he was like, I think in his late 60s. And he's like, I've been here for 30 years. And I thought, I was in my 20s at the time, and I thought I couldn't think of anything else. If that's the trajectory, I need to get out. And I did. I quit my job on the spot, and I said I can't. This is not what I've signed up for. And I think it was quite impulsive, and that's a bit of my character anyway. And so I quit, and I was just like, yeah, I've quit. And then I thought, wait, I've quit my job and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I remember going home and, getting to Goldman Sachs was such a big celebration for the family. Like, we had a Goldman Sachs party. So coming home, I was like, right, how's this going to go down?
As well.
Lagos, London, Lisbon, everyone. And so I remember telling my dad, like, I've quit my job. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to pursue football. I'd worked in law up until that point for about 8 years, and I thought, this is the chance for me to go and do that. And I worked and volunteered with Arsenal Football Club for a year on their GAP programme. That took me coaching abroad and around different parts of the world. And then I remember coming back, and during that transition, it was, I'd come from this kind of lucrative, lawyers earn quite well, I had a nice car, had a great place, and suddenly I was having to fund myself through this GAP program. So, I took cleaning jobs. I worked at Tesco at night so I could coach during the day. I remember having to kind of do some contract work, go coaching, do Tesco, finish at 3 a.m. in the morning, shower, and then back to the club. Wow. And I did that for a year because I knew that I needed to have that experience, given that I hadn't coached before. Going abroad opened my eyes to a different world entirely. I'm very much a Londoner and didn't think that there was life outside of the M25. So it was fantastic to kind of live in China, and I was there for 3 years and coached. And during that time, I was also volunteering for Goals for Girls, which is a US nonprofit. And in the summers, I'd go and do their soccer camps and come back. And there was an opportunity to kind of develop that relationship. And I think that's something that is key. And I'm sure a lot of people here know that networking is pretty much how things go. It's not necessarily what you can do, but who you know sometimes. And I kept that relationship going, and an opportunity came to become the executive director, and they appointed me. They're a US organization. We have programs in India, South Africa, and the US, and so I manage a team of about 25 individuals, and we have about 6,000 girls in our program. We try and encourage them to be leaders off the pitch and on the pitch, and try and get them in the right mindset that we think they need at that age. I was also fortunate to land a job with Burnley Football Club. They have new American owners who,
You've earned it, love.
Yeah. Well, I think there's that too, and I think, you know,
No, I think that's
talking about
the main thing, right?
it is the main thing, but when we're talking about being vulnerable, I think there's still that kind of imposter syndrome that I think, how have I, from barking, got here? And yes, I'm capable, but there is also that voice at the back of the head that's like, how have you got here? And so it's trying to navigate that. So you're right, earned it, and work there and with the first team and trying to get them essentially a general manager role. Our vision is to be competing at the top flight of women's football. So I'm able to balance the non-profit side of football with the professional side of football. And, you know, every day is a dream for me. I'm literally living it. So it's, it's been great.
That's amazing. Monique, I'm going to come back to Monique in a second. Jen, I just want to quickly ask you in a nutshell, just for everyone here, although I did give you a little, intro, but just as the other girls have done as well.
Sure. So I think most of us have said we've had a non-traditional entry to football. I'm not sure there is a traditional entry. Hopefully there is in the future, but definitely not for me. So I started actually as a personal assistant. I didn't leave school with a particular career path, and I was very envious of family and friends that were like, right, I'm going to do that, and I know that there is X, Y, Z that I need to do to get there. So I started my career as a personal assistant. That's how I landed at Nike, and I really value, well, the role itself, traditionally undervalued personal assistants, but for me it was incredibly valuable because it enabled me as a junior member of staff at that time to be in and amongst the best in the industry and senior leaders, and also have a kind of top-down view of the organisation and the business, and really choose where I dipped in and out, and that enabled me to find that actually football was a real interest of mine. At Nike, I identified sports marketing as an area that I wanted to find out more in, managed to get a role within there working on the England kit deal. So at that time we'd just signed the contract with the FA, so I was doing all of the operational, logistical side, measuring players for kits. I've had worse roles. But yeah, that's when my kind of relationship with the FA started, and went on to do a bit of player management. And in all honesty, feel like this is a safe space. I burnt out. Player management wasn't for me. It was relentless. It was little old me looking after 120 odd young guns, which Nike called the kind of any player that was basically not making first team football at that point, managing their boot contracts, fulfilling product requirements, and that really kind of got me focused on knowing that I wanted to be in football. Player management wasn't right. I enjoyed the relationship with the FA, and maybe sponsorship was an area that I needed to explore, which landed me into Barclays, into the various roles. So really grateful for the people, I think, for me, that have been part of that journey. And yeah, like I said, non-traditional, but kind of muddled my way through, found something that I loved. I think everyone this morning has said, do what you love, and it doesn't feel like a job. And I was saying to someone, I think Sara earlier, this week and the last few weeks have been mental hours. I'm still here, I still love it, I'm not quitting, so yeah.
Good. That's the perfect message. And Monique, I mean, because we heard about your career and your background in the last panel, I suppose listening to these stories, does it still surprise you how many hoops people have to jump through to be accepted in this industry?
Yeah, and actually I didn't tell you about my background, actually, if anybody...
Oh, maybe it's because I know them.
Because actually I started off in, I'm a management consultant by trade, and leadership, culture, people, performance is the thing I do. And actually I asked for my role as non-exec director, which most people don't know about. So what people think is that I was invited. Actually, I asked. I was already doing quite a bit of work with Brentford, and I actually said to them, if you are really serious about being an inclusive organisation, why don't you have a woman on your board? And I think a lot of people don't know what a non-exec director does. So just to let you know, is that Fair Play launched a piece of research last week to say that boards in the Premier League, only 11% of the people on boards in the Premier League are women, with 39% in corporates, but only 11%. Now, we've heard of the poster people that are Delia and Karen Brady and people like that, but actually, honestly, they don't do anything for women. So if we're in a safe space, they do nothing for women whatsoever. And there are a couple of really great women who sit, you know, the CEO of Leicester City, and there's Donna at Tottenham, there's a few great people, there's Amanda at Newcastle, but there are very few women who sit as non-execs, and we oversee strategy on the ball. We make sure that people are delivering, we hold people to account, we make sure they're doing the right thing by people. Now, luckily enough, the ask that I had to get on the board was met with we would love that, but this isn't a done deal. We need to submit you to the powers that be. Tina knows who the powers that be are, because actually I was working at the same organisation as Tina, doing a lot of leadership work for them when this opportunity came up. So I do think that the career of being a board director is not the career that people think it is. Actually, it's a lot of advocating, it's a lot of sponsoring, it's a lot of making sure that people do right by, you know, a football club, and ensuring that what you do off the pitch, which by the way is very different from what you do on the pitch, is that you run a club which is sustainable. You make decisions which make that club exist and thrive and not just survive, which is actually what our motto is. So I think it's a difficult one, because I think, for me, I wanted to do this job because I believe there's not a lot of women who are at the top of football organisations who, you've got to see it to be it. A lot of people have said that. You've got to see it to be it. If you don't see anyone on your exco, your executive committee, you don't see anyone on the board, how do you believe that there is a pathway that you can get to if you're a woman? And one of the reasons I wanted to do it was I wanted to show women that there was a pathway, and that I said I would support others to do what I said. Now, that's not easy, because I can't physically go and hand people out and go, you know, I'll mentor you to be the best you can do, because it's also about the circumstances that exist in those clubs and in those organisations. But the truth is that there are very few influential women in senior leadership positions in football. And that has got to damn well change. Yep. Because running sustainable business doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman or non-binary or whatever you identify as. It's about your skills that matter, you know, not your gender or your sex.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because we can all have influence in all the different spheres that we work in, and it is, you know, not just on the pitch. We all do different things outside football, but that's really interesting what you said, because sometimes there are a lot of women in. Not a lot. There are a few women in certain positions, but they don't. They're taking care of their stable. They're not actually there. Whilst you can see it, you kind of have to have that affinity towards them, or you've got to sort of relate to them. And actually, I wanted to ask you, because for me, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, who are your inspirations?" I'm like, well, I'm Asian, Bengali, Muslim. I'm sorry, none of the broadcasters when I was growing up looked like me, would sound like me, had my background. Some of them had famous dads. Some of them had, you know, if you don't relate to the person at the top, it's not redundant that they're there, because you do still have to see it to believe it, but you have to have they've got to be personable. They've got to be someone that there's got to be something there that you can say, oh yeah, that was a bit like me, or that was like me. Did either of you have any kind of influence in terms of a higher power that would, I mean, I know you had Monique, but did you, for example, have anyone that you could look at and say, right, okay, she's doing that job. I think that would probably be something that I could do, because I can, oh yeah, she did da-da-da.
Absolutely not. And I think and I think it's interesting, because Joe and I were talking about this just on the tube this morning, and you know, I have a certain personality where, you know, I'm an extrovert and I'm quite confident sort of on the outside. So I've probably just pushed my way in, I would say, and having friendship, I think, Monique, you said it earlier, friends around me that would support me to do that. What really troubles me is any women sat in the room now who are thinking, I wouldn't have the guts to sit on a panel. And, you know, so how do we let women of all personalities, who might be slightly more introverted, who might not have the confidence to knock on the door of a man in a really senior position at a FIFA or UEFA and say, hang on, I belong here and you're going to listen to me and this is why. And I think part of that comes with background as well, which is why I'm absolutely passionate about inclusion and making sure that we're listening to all voices and everyone's background and making sure that everyone has a place to be, because as you said, it's seeing is believing. It's so important that when we've got into these roles as women, and it's really interesting, the two that you name checked, that we all pull each other up, because you know, we shouldn't be the minority, and that's the point.
And Lola, actually, I want to ask you about that, because, you know, we're Tina as well, you know, we're ethnic minorities or whatever, however you want to describe it. I hate the BAME, I hate all of that, but what was your experience? Because I can't imagine that it was easy, because certainly for me, I was the only Asian doing or pushing to do what I wanted to do. I was very much like you, a self-starter. Did you have that kind of experience where people looked at you differently? I bet the answer is yes, when people looked at you differently because you're not white.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, even just from the lawyer, the reason why I became a lawyer is because in year 9 we had a careers day. And I think I share this at the leadership course that we did. I saw the word barrister, didn't have a clue what it meant. I went and asked, and the teacher was like, oh, don't worry, it's not for people like you. That was at 14. Wow. And I was just naive, and I remember going home being like, oh, Dad, look, I saw this, and he was furious, and I was just a bit like, all right, calm down. It's not that, like at 14, just not having that.
You just don't have the consciousness, do you?
Exactly, and he was like, you can do whatever you want to do.
That's powerful,
and that
though,
is,
having that in your family.
Yeah, and that is where my source came from. I watched him battle hard to make a way for me, and so failure wasn't really an option for me because I knew how much he had slaved. And also I think the power of somebody telling you no, again, it's personality, but I'm not having it. You have no right to tell me what I can and can't do. And so that was just on the law side, talk less of the football side, where I think, you know, when we're talking about role models, I didn't really see anyone that looked like me. Perhaps later on, maybe Eniola Loku, we shared the fact that we were Nigerian, she was a lawyer, she was in football. Yeah. But other than that, I couldn't really see it. And that kind of feeds back into the point I was making earlier, that there is that kind of imposter syndrome, because I look around and I work in Burnley, it's not London, and
I was actually going to ask you that, because you know, London's diverse and Burnley perhaps less so. So
very much less so. I think maybe there's probably 3 people of colour in the club at the moment, but you know, it's
in the club or in the city. No.
But it's you know, I think as an ethnic minority, you learn to, rightly or wrongly, to accommodate and deal with that. That is part and parcel of who you are. You have to operate in these spaces, and I think there's also a pressure to do more, to work twice as hard to get half as far, and that's something that has always been pushing for me. I feel an obligation that, you know, if I do a good job, maybe somebody might look at another black woman and be like, well, if Lola can do it, she can do it, and that's not because I think I'm great, but the opposite is also true. If I fumble, it would be like, well, because she's black kind of thing. So it's that pressure.
It's
that I
the
put on myself.
responsibility, isn't it? You have a responsibility, which you might, sometimes you don't realise it at the time, but it's later on when people tell you that, oh, I saw you and da-da-da, whatever. Did you feel any, because you're not obviously part Mauritian or half Mauritian, but did you ever feel any kind of, not discrimination, but any kind of awareness that your ethnicity might be an issue?
No, because let's be honest, I don't look it. And
no, you don't.
When I was growing up, unfortunately, my mum and dad were very like, you know, don't tell people that you're half Indian. My mum suffered a lot of racial abuse, and she was protecting me, and I probably would do the same if I'm a mother. Well, I am,
really
and I'd
sad.
probably do the same. But
it's really sad to hear that.
As I've grown up, I stand up for it, and it's the first thing I'll say. I'm half Mauritian, I'm so proud of it, and I've seen my cousins who are brown, and they've suffered racism, and it's not right. But I think, Monique's a great example, but I've been surrounded by it in the data world, and there aren't many women in the data world. So I remember, you know, there were men come in, oh, what do you know? What do you know about numbers and football, you don't know anything. Okay, sorry, I don't have a PhD, but I can stand there and give as good as you're giving right now. And even if I look now, there aren't many women in the data world, and when I was in it, there was nobody. But now, I look on LinkedIn, you see people working at these companies like Sci Sports and Mariella at Norwich being a scout and using data. It's great, but yeah.
I think it's really important to redefine what leadership is, actually, because I have a young woman of colour who works for me who is so incredibly talented, and she came to us from the BBC, and she started in lockdown. So my first Zoom meeting with her as a one-on-one to get to know her, she said to me, the problem with working at the BBC is there was absolutely no one there who was like me. And it really, really stuck with me. And just recently,
Give her my number.
Yeah, when we were going through the appraisal process, I was sat down with her and I said, do you know what, that's really, really stuck with me that you've said that. And what I want to make sure is in 5 years' time, when someone, the young you, is joining our company, that they absolutely see that there is a woman like you in a leadership role. And she went, yeah. And then she said, the thing is, though, I'm not really that good at sort of spreadsheets and things like that, and I'm really creative, and I love making content, so I'm actually probably not going to be a leader. And I was like, I'm managing director of this company, and I directed that film that we saw earlier. My job is so creative, but that's the patriarchy, making us think that if you're going to be a leader and you're going to sit on a board, then you have to be an organised person, and you can't be creative, and you can't be you, essentially. And we sort of talked about it, and I could see her sort of having the realisation as I was having the realisation. And that's the thing, the word leadership. You can be a leader in so many different ways, and there is no better industry than football to show how that different leadership can come into fruition.
Absolutely. And Jen, look, Barclays have been so supportive of the women's game for a number of years now. Do you see that on the inside as well? Is that something that you sort of have been familiar with and you can understand the correlation and why it's actually working?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my first taste of women's football was back at Nike when I was given a very small budget and told to do something with the women's players. And it was, it was just for show, to be honest. If we're being honest, the budget was ridiculous. I was charged with going out and signing boot contracts with next to no money and the offer of some free kit, basically. And that was, we're talking 2013. And then obviously went off and did a number of other things. And being back in women's football, and I was talking to a colleague that used to work at Nike, Izzy Mikowski, who's now director of players there, at a partners meeting, and we were like, we're back, we're in women's football, and we have budgets, and we have interest, and we have support. And from a Barclays perspective, when my boss asked me to come over and manage the Women's Super League and the grassroots initiatives, I absolutely bit her arm off because I'm passionate about it and I want to make change, and that is absolutely reflected through Barclays. And I think, we've talked about 20 years in football, moving to support the Women's Super League and the grassroots initiative and grow the game. That's something that obviously Barclays didn't do single-handedly with the Premier League, but played a part in the kind of ecosystem of sponsorship over the last 20 years of working to develop the beast that is the Premier League, and we're absolutely invested in doing the same. And within my role and my team, it's very much a true partnership with the FA. We're taking our learnings that we have built up with the Premier League over the last 20 years down to really basic kind of operational, logistical, administrative things, and plugging them into what we do with the FA. And whenever we, yes, it's about equality, but also parity. So we have the power as a brand and as a sponsor to mandate certain things. So if someone's asking for a Premier League player appearance or the Premier League trophy to be present at something, given, if it's the right forum, we absolutely will say, we have access to the WSL, we have access to the WSL players. They should be there, they should be present, and putting these people on the same stage, that's a really important part. So we were saying earlier, yes, there's lots of logos around here, and we've been mentioned a number of times, but it absolutely is an important part of Barclays. And to your point around having leaders to aspire to. My boss, Katie Bowman, who's actually in another room doing a
Damn, she can't hear you.
I know.
Oh, Dora, I think it's being recorded, so if you need a pay rise.
I'm glad she does it. But she is absolutely an inspiration to me and someone that I could look up to. And within our kind of sponsorship ecosystem within Barclays is a trailblazer. And she'd hate to hear me say that, but it's absolutely true.
No, it's amazing. The other thing I want to ask about is, well, look, we've all got to portray ourselves in a certain, we don't have to, we are who we are, but it's something we were talking about earlier, wasn't it, Sara, that something which might not be obvious to people, but actually when you talk about it, it actually is a very personal story for you, that like one of your biggest challenges that you've faced in your career. Just sort of explain to everyone.
I think the thing that I'm realising now that I'm over the age of 40, is this notion of things that we just accept as women. So as women, we always have to think about appearance, how we come across. When I first started out in this industry, I think, let's make no bones about it, we have to prove ourselves every day within the world of football. So it starts out as a fan. I need to prove that I do know everything, that I read the paper back to front. And
CFAX back in your day? Yeah, awesome.
And then you sort of start your career and you work 10 times harder than everyone else, as we've said about children. The amount of times I've let my children or my family down because I've put work first and I've not been brave enough to stick my hand up. And then it struck me recently, last year I was asked to give an award at the Broadcast Sport Awards, and the first thing that went through my mind was, what am I going to wear? And the second thing was, have I got enough time to lose half a stone? And I actually sat back and checked myself, and I thought, hang on a minute, this is ridiculous. I work for a company, the two founders are men, and they're fantastic. On the day of the awards, Tom texted me and went, can't find my black tie, da, da, da. He hadn't
That's his biggest concern, black tie. Yeah.
thought about it until the morning, what he was going to wear. And it was just such a profound moment for me that growing up was just entrenched in me, that everything about being a woman is, I need to change myself, I need to be a bit different, oh, I'm too loud. So to be a leader and to be a managing director, I have to be really serious and really sensible, and I can't, be myself. And I think that's the biggest message I would give to everyone in this room. The only way we are going to be able to say, my child is sick, so I need to leave and be with them, is if we let ourselves be truly, truly authentic as women, and don't be the woman that gets up there and acts like a man and keeps everyone out. Like, let's all do it together and lift ourselves up, and we don't need to change.
Monique, I can see you nodding. I imagine you've been in many a room where you've experienced that as well.
Absolutely, 100%. And I feel like that now. First of all, I've always struggled with my weight, and I've gone up and down. And actually, so what I think about first is that people see me as the fat girl. So that's a thing I have to bear. So actually, it's another protected characteristic, being fat, by the way. I just wanted to let you know. But it is another, I think that actually, and actually, I don't really feel like that now. I feel like, today I'm up, but, another day I might be half a stone less, whatever. But I actually think that we are victims to our own self-thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's our own self-thoughts that stop us from having the confidence. And when I walk into a room, I don't want someone to see me as that woman or that fat person or the blonde, because, by the way, I've had discrimination about that. And the other thing is that I hide the fact that I'm Jewish, which is ridiculous. I shouldn't hide it. 6 million people died, not hiding it. But I do hide that. And I just think to myself, why do I hide these pieces of myself that actually are all me? They are all me. They're all me. They're what I call the myriads of all the things that I actually am. And I really believe that there are men that do have some of these things as well, that do think about these things. I know that I've spoke to my husband when he hit 50. He said he hit a place where he said, have I done what I wanted to do? Have I achieved what I have? I still feel like I've got this provider instinct in me to care for my wife and, my family and everyone around me. And he said, I don't think there's a place where I can go to talk about that a bit of myself. So if he's thinking that, and we're thinking that, and we've got the years of, the thousands of years of what we believe has been misogynistic behaviour, we've all got a problem that we need to share with somebody. And we can only share that if we believe that being authentic is not going to be judged and not going to be criticised. And one of my friends talked about when she was on a British Airways flight, and by the way, she isn't really my friend very much anymore after what she said. But actually, she made a comment about the BA cabin crew not being very good looking. And I said, sorry, why is that? And she said, oh, she's not very good looking. And really, if you're serving people who've got money and you need to really, they could have put a better looker, on the plane. And I said, she's giving you meals and making sure that you're comfortable, and you're worried about what she looks like. Who are you worried for? You or your husband? Or what you're worried? That judgment doesn't actually just come from men; it comes from women too. So
very much so.
So often, when you create a path in an organisation to where you're going, particularly a career in football, I think when people get to a certain level, they've had to work so hard to get there that their elbows push others out the way.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's about getting to where you're going to go and looking all around you and going, I've actually got really great women that really understand the path I've taken. And when I get there, they celebrate me for everything I've done to achieve getting there. They don't go, oh my God, she's taking my space.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women don't try and pursue that because they are worried that there'll be judgment and recrimination when they get there and they have to be a certain way. And I'm saying, don't be a certain way. Just be who you are. And if that's not enough for someone, there's others who might be interested. Don't worry about the others. There's always somebody who's going to be interested.
That's a real life lesson, actually. And I think in this industry, we see, to be fair, I think everyone in this industry, I work with some fantastic people. I come across brilliant people every single day. I don't come across, nasty people on a regular basis. I think it's very few and far between. But I think the one thing I would also say is just be authentic. I always joke about how I've got bosses that probably hate me because I tell them exactly what I think. All the things that they've done wrong, I tell them. I have no fear to say it now because I've been there, I've seen it, and you've done me wrong. So I'm not ashamed to say that. So I completely agree. I think authenticity is something that is so important, and that is what we are as women. We are made up of so many different parts. Anyone is, and there are so many different aspects to everyone's personality, and the point is to bring that on the table, but do it with kindness and humility and be vulnerable, be open, and that is how you will always succeed. I always, it's like when people say to me, oh, you're interviewing, oh God, what's it like to interview Ronaldo? I'm like, he's a guy. He's a normal person. Like if you actually talk to him, he's actually and this is what it is. We are all people. We are all, you've got to forget the image and actually just get through to the person. But something else you said, having like the girl tribe, I just wanted to ask some of the panels, like just that importance of that girl tribe. Have you experienced that amongst yourselves?
Yeah, I definitely have. And a lot of my friends, they don't work in football, but so today they're like, you're doing what? So I'm getting messages, yeah, go on, girl, go on, and so I'm like, oh, guys, stop. Things like that, and like we've all got children, we help each other out, and that's what's important, having those people that inspire you, cheer for you when you're not going to cheer for yourself, and just to keep you, and when you're down, and I cry so much these days, oh my gosh, so emotional, and they're like, it's all right, let me get the wine, you cry, come on girl. You need that, that's what gets you through life.
Yeah, did you feel that as well, Lola?
Yeah, and I think just to add to that as well is there's that element to it, of course, and there's also the element of those group of girls keeping you in check as well when you're kind of getting ahead of yourself. And I think for me and our group, I've got a core group of girls that we went to secondary school together, and I think there's about 15 of us, and that's something that I've always valued, that no nonsense, I'm not going to blow smoke up you, I'm just going to tell you how you're being an idiot and you need to calm down, or just having that ability to reason, because sometimes when you are in positions where people don't expect you to be, there can be a misperception that you've done more, not more, but somehow that you're above or a level above, and it's always good to have people who have known you since you were 12 with braces and were a little bit awkward that can just centre you. So that girl tribe, I think, is crucial.
Those of you with kids, how much do your kids know about what you actually do? What do they know about your jobs?
No idea. I was just going to, add to Lola's point there. not just kind of girl tribe, but having someone that's keeping you in check and grounding you. And for me, it's my husband who works for the Met Police. And having him not only as a husband who, cares for me as a person, but understanding his work and getting a download on his day is very different, as you can imagine.
What does he?
So he's a PCSO. He works in the community within Twickenham, and the stories and the real
Talk about keeping it real.
Exactly,
Yes,
the
really
real life that is going on, and it makes me. Not only will it kind of ground me when I'm getting het up about some sort of like really, in the scheme of things, really irrelevant thing in this scheme of life, but also makes me appreciate the industry that I work in and that I do something that I love and I have the license and the team around me and the support to try things, and if it doesn't work, then we'll try something else. Or, whereas he's dealing with real life issues day in, day out. So I think that is important, and we should celebrate the industry in that way, but also keep grounded.
Yeah.
As a job.
And I was just going to ask, I mean, not everyone here is a mother, but just to ask, like, do you find that kids keep you grounded? Like, if you don't tell them what you do, is that not easier? You're just mum then?
Yeah, no, my 8-year-old, she's got such attitude. And she tells me, Mummy, what are you doing? I mean, I still play football, and she came to watch me once, and on the side she went, Daddy, Mummy's not very good, is she? Right, no dinner for you tonight. Rude. But, like, things like that, and I tell her what I do, I make games, and she's like, I say we work for Sega, Sonic. Sonic? Can I meet Sonic? Yeah, okay. Yeah. But yeah, they're the biggest, the ones that will say, you're wrong, you're stupid, you're talking nonsense.
Yeah, because I'm embarrassing, by the way, as a mum. So I'm apparently really embarrassing. So I don't tell my kids anything. So I might go and do something really glamorous, and I'll just mention it in passing, not like it's a big thing. But I think that's quite and I know this isn't relevant to everyone, but I just feel that in my personal experience, that's actually been really nice to keep myself grounded and actually to keep it separate as well. But then how do you draw the line between being that inspirational woman who's doing all these amazing things that you guys are doing and then keeping them grounded, because you want them to be inspired by what you're doing? So how do you strike that balance if you're a mother?
I don't think I've done that particularly well, because it's my daughter who's at the end shot of the promo that we did, who says the line, "It's just football," and she's now told everyone that she's famous.
Oh, she
is? Yes, her teacher showed the film in class, and now some of my teachers call me a celebrity. So I've done an absolutely terrible job, I think, of keeping her grounded, I'm afraid, but, never mind.
I think my kids are grounded because they're older. And I think they've had life experience. And by the way, there's a difference between being cancelled and embarrassing. My kids cancel me frequently.
No.
I'm cancelled a lot. We will sit around the table. They don't live with me anymore, and I miss them dreadfully. But we will talk about everything from what happened with J.K. Rowling, the transgender issue. We'll talk about all sort of inclusion things, and they have an absolute view in a different way. And and I have so much respect for that. I put them in, and this is not just a holiday tour guide thing, 18 to 30s. Okay, so there's a group of people that I think are coming forward now with completely different perspectives.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm a 50-plus woman, quite far up the 50-plus woman thing, but I'm a 50-plus woman, and actually, we have to be humble and learn from the people that are coming through. Yeah. And actually, leadership is that new group of people, and my kids do that. They keep me grounded. They go, "Mum, that's a load of rubbish." There was other words, which I won't use here, but they'll say things like that. But also they'll say, "I agree with you." And I think that's really important to get perspective, because, sometimes when I'm working with people who are 30 years younger than me. And in that 30 years, they've had 30 years of life that is different from my life. And, I think leadership is about learning from others. I don't think it's just about, what you do. And, but I'm always really grateful when they challenge something and they tell me they've challenged it. And they've challenged it in the workplace. My children are dual heritage. So my husband, is Choudhury. He's born and brought up in India. And I'm Jewish, we've got it all going on. And
It's like a proper melting pot there.
Yes, we've got it all
Great.
going on, and confusion, we are confused.com. You know, now us. And I think that's absolutely fine. But I've also got friends who are not parents and have chosen not to be parent, or whatever reason, didn't find somebody they fell in love with, or just chose it as a lifestyle. And they've always said to me that keeping them grounded is working with youth.
Yeah.
Just spending time with youth is to actually get a different perspective on life. And that actually they learn from that experience, and often they mentor youth because by mentoring them, they learn about them as well.
Yeah.
And I would always recommend that you mentor youth because it tells you so much about yourself, what you've not picked up along the way, what you need to still pick up, and that you can continue to learn. That's emotional intelligence, isn't it?
Yeah,
You can
100%.
continue to learn even when you don't know all the answers.
Absolutely. And others on the panel, have you had mentors on your journey?
Monique. She,
Thank you.
she is, she...
The gold star.
She has, yeah. She's helped me through the times of how on earth do I deal with this egotistical man in front of me? How do I deal with these group of men? And yeah, when I lost my job as well, I remember she called me, it must have been like first week of January last year, and she went, "Tina, how are you?" And I literally just burst into tears on her, and she was like, "Oh gosh, it's that bad, is it?"
This is going to be a long one. Someone else better make the dinner.
So yeah, Monique's really like pushed me, but there's been others along the way as well. Like I could sit here, I'm sure everyone could sit here and say so many names.
I think mentorship is an interesting one because it doesn't necessarily need to be a formal thing either. I think in the role that I do now, I just try and keep my proverbial door wide open so that I give my email out to everyone, to be honest. And I like people to know that I'm available because I think that's what wasn't available for us. I've had a couple of key people throughout my life, but it is one or two. There wasn't really anyone who was there as the guiding light who could offer the advice. So I think, speak to everyone. You don't need to find one formal mentor, just especially in a room like this. And I think one thing that's quite key, coming back to your point about children, is I actually think it's really important for children to see what we're doing, because I know we work really hard with my son that he doesn't talk about women's football or men's football. It is literally, he'll just sort of watch the game. And I think for us as women to truly, truly change this industry, we've got to get the fans on side. We can do whatever we do in these rooms and at broadcast level and things like that. But until the majority of people on those terraces really do, honestly in their heart of hearts, think that we belong, we are not, we're still going to have a long, long way to go. And to get the fans on board, it's about how you talk to your sons, how you talk to your daughters. And it is probably about us being, quite proud of what we do and sort of putting ourselves out there.
How do we make it more inclusive then? Because I've had like a top BBC boss say to me, "Oh, you didn't go to football with your dad?" I was like, "No, my dad was a risk-averse Asian man. Do you really think he was going to take me to a football match?"
Probably friends with my dad.
Do you know what I mean? We wouldn't be doing that. There's no way. I fell in love with football by watching it on TV when I was 11, and that was it. That was me done. Like love affair for life. But I didn't go to games until I was a teenager, and I went with my brother and my mates. But how do you? Because our room looks pretty diverse. It could be better, if I'm honest. And my industry could be a hell of a lot better. There could be more people that look like me, but there aren't. So it's got to be football for all. And I think sometimes that gets lost. And sometimes, I remember I worked with Talk Sport, and I remember last season they were doing something for International Women's Day, and they sent me this package that they were going to use on our programme. And I just said to my producer, I was like, "Mate, there's not one non-white voice on there. You can't talk about International Women's Day and women in football by not having not a single voice that isn't white." So how do we go about creating that big cultural shift? Because, if I'm being honest, it's still there. Yeah. There are lots of initiatives in place. There are lots of companies not pay lip service to it. They actually do go out and do it, but we are so far away.
I think it's a complicated one. I think there's two sides to it. I think there's a lot of willingness to do stuff, and there isn't enough know-how or intel. So people want to do things that celebrate different cultures or embrace and be diverse, but don't necessarily know how to go about it and don't want to be seen to be doing the wrong thing. And I think there needs to be, a collaboration. I'm always open to people saying, Lola, I don't know what this would come off like. I don't know what this would be. Can I have your thoughts? That doesn't make me a spokesperson for every single black person in the UK, but what it does is it allows me to share what I think is my view. And I think for me personally, what I've done to make sure that this inclusiveness remains true is I mentor people. I mentor women of colour. I do that deliberately because I would have really benefited from doing that. And so during the pandemic, outside of work, we set up a non-profit organisation that is called the Racial Justice League. And what we do is we deliberately work with boys and girls of colour to get them into places that ordinarily might be more difficult, whether that's law, whether that's sport, and try and put them in contact. And I think if everyone has that kind of notion of making a deliberate effort, I think that's the best place to start, and it can grow from there. I also want to advocate against tokenism, because I think that's also sometimes can undo the good intentions of people that want to open up those spaces. And so it's not a case of, oh yeah, we need to get our EDI initiative, she'll do. I think everybody
There's a lot of that.
There is.
There's a lot of that.
But
In a lot of industries, but I see it in football
yeah,
a lot.
there's a lot of that, and it's a double-edged sword. Do you take that and say, well, I'm going to get in, and then once I'm in, change it from the inside? Or do you take offence to that and say, well, actually, I don't want to be here just because I'm black or just because I fit your quota? I'm not making a judgment either side, but for me, once I am in, I make no secrets about opening doors for others, because I know personally how difficult it has been. And once you get your shot, you do what you want with it, and that's up to you. But I think for most people, it's just having that opportunity in the first place.
Yeah.
And we've got to do a lot more work on social mobility and social inclusion.
Yeah.
Because actually, we don't use the word equity enough. We give everyone the opportunity, and we say that football's open and people can come. But how many football clubs actually take in apprentices from people from disadvantaged backgrounds who don't have who aren't on the pitch side? The side where football has a lot of careers is off the pitch. It's not on the pitch. And actually there are great opportunities to take in people who come from communities where otherwise they wouldn't, look at football, can't afford to go to football on a Saturday. Maybe they don't even have access to a TV to watch it. Maybe they just kick a ball about on the street. Where are we getting to those people? And I think there's an equity issue in football, and as it was with women's football, which is, we used to call women's football a few years ago the middle class game, because it was only for people that could drive their kids to go to play it.
Yeah.
But what about if you work in an inner city, you live in an inner city, and you live in a place where you haven't got access, you can't get on a bus, there's nowhere to go because you haven't got a talent centre near you. Yeah. We've really got to change the system so that everything's accessible to people, doesn't matter where they are, in terms of their financial background, their social background, in order to give them a chance to get in. And that's this social inclusion is up there with EDI as we see it. And I think actually EDI, I'm going to be really unpopular. I'm just going to be like a...
Go on, do it.
Fart in a spacesuit, really, right this round. But I do think that EDI in its current format is going to change. And I think in 2 or 3 years' time, we're going to be talking about social inclusion more, much, much more than we are now, because it's going to be how to get those that can't to be more on par with those that can.
Yeah.
And I think if we can focus our efforts on that, just by definition, you will attract people from communities where you haven't plugged into. So when people use the term hard to reach, are they hard to reach, or have you just not?
You just not go into them.
You've just not gone there, and you've not gone in, and you've not got them.
Yeah, I think another point to make there is that you talk about change kind of in the broader sense, but we're all women within the industry or going to be within the industry that can make a difference and impact our smaller circles, and that might be in a way that you don't necessarily pay value to, but it's still within your remit. So as long as you are doing what you can, to champion that aspect, then change will be created. But it will take all of us to do that. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, exactly. So have I gone over? Right, okay, so before we go there, sorry, of course I have. I mean, come on.
3 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I was going to say something really like non-politically correct, but, I'm Asian, we don't do things on time. But anyway, so just before we go then, what sort of final piece of advice would you give to people? I suppose everyone in this room is at different stages of their careers, and everyone is either sort of entrenched in this industry or still trying to find their way. So given all the wealth of knowledge that you've garnered over the years, and we're talking about careers throughout football, I always used to say to friends of mine who are accountants, I'm like, that's a great job because you can work in any industry you want. So, whatever it is that you do, there is a place for everyone in football. So what final piece of advice would you give to people who might be at that early stage in their career? And we'll go along the line.
Okay. I think for me, it's finding the thing that you're truly, truly good at and really love, and finding your place within this industry. So as I've said, for me, it was storytelling. I just love telling stories, as you can probably tell. And so that's how I've found my way. And this is a massive industry. If you're a brilliant chef and that's your passion, go and be head chef at your favourite club. Like, that's
exactly.
the thing. There are
you've got to be so open, haven't you?
Many jobs, and don't let anyone sort of pigeonhole you or hold you back. And it sounds so simple, but if you're not enjoying it, it's not right. You've got to be doing this and giving up a lot of your time and a lot of your personal life for it. So if it doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel right and fun quickly, move on.
Mine would be to believe in yourself and stay confident. There are people out there, men and women, who are going to chip at you, chip until your confidence is knocked, and ignore them. Tell them to do one in the nicest possible way. Depends who they are. And just believe in yourself, and those little supporters, your group, keep them on side, keep them together, and just don't lose that confidence in your ability. You know what you're good at.
I think there's several things, but the first thing for me that's worked for me is to network. I think it's, events like this, everyone in this room should leave with somebody else's email and contact details to follow up with. Network, follow up, and I think also going along with, marrying your passion with what you do. If you do not enjoy what you're doing, you're just wasting time. And if there's a thought that keeps coming to you, I think, I don't know how, I'm not sure, that is probably an indication that you should be doing that. If that's what you think about, if that's what you're aspiring to do all the research that you need to find out how to do it. What does it take to be a coach? What does it take to be in the media industry? Who do I need to be following? How do I need to network my way to get to an event? Can I volunteer for free, which isn't always an option, but can I give my services in a way that can be beneficial later? I think for me, volunteering was what got me permanent jobs further down the line anyway. So those are a few things that I would chuck out there. And of course, you have to back yourself. If you're not believing in your own product, no one else is going to buy it. So you've got to genuinely believe that your ability to do it is there. So that's what I would say.
I think that's amazing. I think everything that anyone says is amazing. I'd echo all that. But I'd also say be curious and be inquisitive and ask people. Don't be frightened of being a bad rash. Just get all over people. Ask questions. Just keep asking questions. How did you get there? How did you do it? What did you do? What were your blocks? What were your barriers along the way? Yeah. Can I talk to you? Who can I speak to about this? I just think ask questions, be curious, be inquisitive, and build your knowledge, because that knowledge will end up being your brand value. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Great advice.
Probably not much to add to everything that's been said.
I know, I'm so sorry you're on the end of that. Everyone says some great things.
The confidence piece resonates massively. What's the worst that can happen? And still this year, this month, I have to check myself and just go for it. This is the first panel I've been on, and Christos, when he asked me, and I was like, oh, don't know, it's the right thing to do. Let me say yes and don't ask me again, because I'm an introvert. I wouldn't naturally put myself up for this kind of thing. And also going on to the network piece, reputation within the industry is incredibly important. So as Lola says, network your arse off, but remember that, you know, people that you meet today and along the way you'll meet in some other way at some other point, no doubt. So that's something I think I've found important to kind of keep myself in check.
Yeah, I think the point is just being a good person.
Yeah.
Actually.
Is that
it's
too
literally
hard?
what your parents would teach you when you were a kid. Just be a good person, and I think that will get you anywhere in life. I'm aware that I haven't asked anyone if they have any questions, and I know we're late, but if anyone has anyone? Okay, we've got a couple here. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm from City Football Group. Firstly, thank you for that. That was like a really amazing discussion. Mm-hmm. My question is linked to what you mentioned, Reshmin, and you spoke about it as well, Lola, about kind of being the only one and not having role models. And at City, I kind of co-lead our women's network, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm really proud that we're trying to hold our business to account. So I would love some like practical things that we can take to our business to say, like, we're not diverse enough. And one of the things I get a lot when I ask HR about it, for example, as well, we don't get any diverse candidates. And it is true, like 90% of our candidates could be white men. So what practical things can organisations do to ensure that we cast the net wider and that we let people know that working at Man City is for them? You know, how can we practically help our organisations?
Personally, I say get people when they're at school, get people when they're still talking about, when they're still deciding what they want to do. When I was young, I mean, there literally was no way I broke down walls, barriers, you name it, because I didn't have social media on my side either, which, you know, thankfully everyone in the room has now. You can directly contact people. I used to watch programs and take down the name of who it was, email them, find out what their email address might be, call up the company. That's what I did to get anywhere. But I wish that if someone had come to me at school and said, right, there is actually no pathway. To be honest, when I started, there was no pathway, but I think it's when you're young, that's when you're hungry, that's when you're excited, that's when you really like considering lots of different options. I would say go and do talks in schools, because I work with so many football clubs and I look at all the press departments, for example, everyone's white male. I mean, everyone. And they all say, and I remember there was a job coming up at a recent club, I won't say who it was, but, you know, I said, oh, have you had any females apply? Yeah, we've had a few females. Who did they take? Another guy from another club, because he had the same, you know, they don't take the chance. But, so you're alienating yourself at that stage already. So I would say, that's my personal opinion, go to schools and talk to people and show them that football is a career. If you're interested in something, and like, as you were saying, if you just want to be a chef, go and be a chef at your favourite football club. Personally, I just think you've got to put that idea into people's heads when they're young, so that when they're older, they can think about it, because, you know, otherwise you'll just have that gap between the people that are applying and the people doing the job, and you're going to constantly have that gap until you find a way to connect the dots in between. That's my opinion.
I think that's right. We've got, as part of our inclusion strategy, what we've done a lot of work around and realised is once you're getting people at job application age, they're already getting the message, my voice isn't important, this industry isn't for me, I don't know enough people, I'm not. So we've just started working with the Global Academy. If anyone doesn't know them, check them out. They are amazing. And it's an academy from year 10 up to year 13, from all sorts of different backgrounds, and we're now taking one student a month for 1 day a week on a rolling rotation, because we want to work with them at that age to say, here's your experience, here's your network, we're listening, you're important. So I think it's about, instead of sitting back and waiting for them to come to you, what we've realised is the industry has to go to them. So go to the local community groups, find your talent, find the 18-year-old who knows everything there is to know about City, and bring them in. And it's hard, and you'll need to lobby really, really hard internally, but it is the only way that we genuinely are going to be more inclusive, is if we get out there and find that talent.
But I do like what you were saying. I think offer work experience. Go to schools and say, right, when you've got, you know, this 2-week gap, come and work for us in the pre-season. Come, you know, that's pretty easy. You know, you're not going to ruin City's chances of winning the Premier League in that time, you know, come and work with us in that time, and, you know, offer those kind of things, because the young and hungry ones who really want to get somewhere will take you up on that offer.
And we've got stuff to learn from them. I think that's why we're doing it as a business. It's not just about us giving back. There are holes in our business, massive holes, because if you just employ people within your network, then you're not diversifying your thinking. Like, we know that to truly keep making the best content that there is in football, I need to get different voices in.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I think, I mean, we do a lot at City in terms of the community and engaging young people and working with diverse kids. But what does that mean for senior positions then? Does that mean we have to wait another 10 years before we have someone of colour in our leadership team or on our board? Because that depresses me.
There are things you can do. There are things.
Yeah.
First of all, there are a couple of job boards or organisations. For instance, Sporting Equals, you could always, they've got 13,000 people as part of their network, and you can put job ads on there, and you will get people from more ethnically diverse communities who will apply for jobs. There's Vasido, there's lots of places. We did this at Brentford. We actually studied this really hard, and we're now seeing the fruits of our labour in terms of, you know, we've taken on 30 people and 50% of them are diverse. And that's because we worked hard. We also heavily practically engaged with the local community. Yeah. University of West London, our local community, London Borough of Hounslow. So when our job vacancies go out, they go out far and wide. We're also trying to attract people who maybe have got a corporate background as well. Because if you're trying to keep a club sustainable, you don't have to actually know about football in order to run a club really well. Yeah. And there's a fallacy that you do. Yeah. There's so many jobs: forensics, fan engagement, you know, community engagement, you know, accountancy, you know, HR, EDI. You don't have to have football experience to do those jobs, but they keep the business sustainable and their leadership. So I think I'm happy to talk to you about this afterwards, but there are many, many things you can do. And that you could actually attract different people from different communities. And there are some networks out there that would really support that.
Cool, thank you. I think we're, yeah. I'm so sorry. There was someone else who put that. Oh, a few hands up. I'm so sorry. Come and approach everyone afterwards. Like, really do. Like, we're all here, and they know a lot. So come and they're all great. So come and chat to everyone. Thank you so much. Sorry, we did go a little bit over. I think there's something I need to say. In this time. Sorry, there's a script. Wow. Okay, now it's time for lunch. Which is